Child, come closer. Sit with me for a while. I don't ask for much. I never did. I never wanted money. I never wanted comfort. All I ever asked was to be remembered. My name is Margaret. I have lived for 90 years. For decades, people came to me with their problems, their worries, their tears. And I listened. I gave. I loved. But as my hands began to tremble, and my voice grew soft, the door stayed closed. No one knocked anymore. Tonight, I will tell you my story, not to complain, but so that someone remembers that I once existed. I was born in a small town in Pennsylvania. Our house was nothing fancy, just 4 walls and a roof. But it was full of rules, expectations, and quiet. My father. He believed girls should be seen, not heard. He said that a girl's job was to listen, to smile politely, to serve quietly, and never make trouble. My mother. She was softer, but she had her own battles. She taught me one lesson I never forgot. Margaret, if you expect little, you will never be disappointed. So I learned to swallow my words. When my brothers ran outside to play, I stayed behind, dusting, cleaning, cooking. When they laughed, I washed dishes and polished shoes. I did not hate my life. I barely questioned it. This was how life worked. Or so I thought. As I grew older, my world grew smaller. Teenage years came with silent rules. School was optional for girls in our neighborhood, so I stayed home. I watched my brothers learn, explore, dream. While I practiced patience, learned to smile through disappointment, and stored my dreams in a hidden corner of my heart. I dreamed of seeing the world. I dreamed of writing stories, singing songs, traveling to cities I had only read about in books. But those dreams, they were quiet. They were mine alone. And I tucked them away neatly, like fragile glass. At 16, I learned something else, something that would shape my life forever. People will love what you give them, but rarely, if ever, will they notice what you need. At 17, my life changed forever. I was married to Thomas, a man who was neither cruel nor particularly kind, just distant. Thomas worked long hours at the factory. He came home tired. He spoke little. And I learned quickly that my voice, my thoughts, my feelings, didn't matter. I cooked. I cleaned. I washed. I listened. I smiled when he asked questions. I nodded when he gave instructions. I became invisible in the life I was expected to lead. When our first child was born, I felt something stir inside me. For the first time, someone needed me completely. I held him close, whispered lullabies, and felt love like I had never felt before. But even in that joy, I felt a piece of myself slipping away. By the time our second child arrived, I had forgotten who I was outside of motherhood. Clothes, hobbies, dreams, even my own name, it all seemed secondary. I was no longer Margaret. I was Mom. Years passed, and I gave my entire being to my family. I rose before the sun, cooked breakfast, packed lunches, washed clothes, ironed shirts, helped with homework, soothed tears, and tucked everyone in at night. People said, "Margaret, you are such a devoted mother." And I smiled, quietly. They never asked who Margaret was behind closed doors. They never asked what she wanted, what she dreamed, or what she feared. Sometimes, late at night, I would stare at the ceiling, wondering if this was all life had in store. But I never complained. I was proud. I was strong. I gave everything because it was expected, because it was my duty. Then, one bitter winter morning, Thomas did not come home. A heart attack. Just like that. I was a widow at 38. No warning. No time to prepare. No chance to say goodbye. People came, hugged me, cried with me. But after a few days, they left. The house was quiet. The children were small. And I had to be strong. I had to keep going. I stitched clothes for neighbors. I cleaned homes. I did everything I could to make ends meet. I had no time to grieve. Weakness was not allowed. And so I buried my sorrow deep, behind a smile. Neighbors and friends came to rely on me. Aunt Margaret, can you watch my child? Aunt Margaret, can you help with food? Aunt Margaret, can you listen to my problems? And I did. Always. I became the person everyone depended on. I wiped tears, gave advice, held hands, and shared their burdens. I thought, one day, when I am old, someone will remember me. Someone will care. Someone will knock on my door. Time passed. The children grew. They went to college, got jobs, moved to new cities. Calls became shorter. Visits became rarer. I told myself, this is success. But at night, I hugged pillows and whispered to myself, is anyone really thinking of me? I realized that love, once given endlessly, can be taken for granted. I realized that a lifetime of giving does not guarantee that someone will be there when you need them. Old age does not knock. It enters quietly, softly, without warning. My knees ached. My eyes weakened. Illnesses came and went. My body grew tired. I waited for footsteps at my door. They never came. The neighbors, once so reliant on me, became busy with their own lives. The children, once my world, were distant. One cold night, I sat alone in my living room. I spoke out loud to the empty chairs around me. I lived for everyone. I gave everything. Was it enough? Tears fell. I laid down, hugged my knees, and whispered my final prayers. I remember the day clearly. The winter was long, and the wind rattled the windows like it wanted to remind me that I was alone. I sat in my old rocking chair, the wood creaking beneath me, and looked around the quiet house. Empty chairs, empty rooms, empty halls. It was the same house where laughter had once filled the air. The same rooms where children had played, where Thomas had laughed, or at least smiled politely. Now, silence was my companion. I thought about my life, the decades of giving, the years of sacrifice. All the nights I had stayed awake, watching over sick children. All the mornings I had cooked breakfast before the sun even rose. All the meals I had skipped, the clothes I had never bought, the dreams I had buried. I whispered to the empty room. I lived for everyone. Did it make a difference? Did anyone see me? And the room stayed silent. Some days, I felt forgotten. Not by the children, necessarily, they loved me, I knew, but by life itself. The world moves fast. People grow, careers demand, lives shift. And sometimes, the old ones, the ones who gave everything, are left behind. I remembered the small injustices, too. The neighbor who ignored my fall, the store clerk who spoke to me impatiently. The hospital visits where I waited hours before someone noticed I was frail and tired. These were not huge betrayals. But they were enough to remind me that the world does not pause for anyone. I thought of Thomas. He had left me in his way, or at least he had stayed. And I loved him too, once. But the love of a husband, the love of children, the love of friends, it is fleeting if we do not nurture it, if life pulls everyone away. I had nurtured everyone else, but no one nurtured me. My mind drifted to my children's birthdays. I remembered baking cakes in the kitchen, frosting them carefully with trembling hands. I remembered sewing costumes for school plays, staying awake through the night to make everything perfect. I remembered the small victories, my son learning to ride a bike, my daughter graduating high school, my youngest getting her first job. I celebrated quietly, proud. I had given everything for them. And still, now, I sat alone. Sometimes I wondered if I had made the right choices. Could I have been selfish? Could I have said no once, just once, and lived for myself? But the thought made me uneasy. Selfishness had never been a part of my life. And perhaps that was the cost. Illness came steadily. My body grew weaker. Falling became easier, rising was harder. Walking across the room was a challenge, lifting a glass of water was a small victory. Even the simplest things required effort. I spent days staring at the walls, listening to the sounds of life outside my windows, children laughing, neighbors talking, cars driving by. I realized that I was now a part of the scenery. A part of the background. A forgotten fixture in a world that had moved on. But there were small comforts. I remembered the warmth of Thomas's hands, the laughter of my children when they were young, the nights I had spent singing quietly to myself while the world slept. Those memories kept me company, even when the living were absent. One evening, as the sun set and the sky turned shades of pink and orange, I sat quietly. I realized something important: life had been beautiful, even with its hardships. The sacrifices, the loneliness, the pain, they had all shaped me. I had loved deeply, given freely, and lived fully, even if the world no longer remembered. I whispered softly, a message to anyone who might still be listening. Remember me. Remember the old ones who gave everything and asked for nothing in return. Remember the women who stayed silent while life passed by. And cherish those still living, before they are only memories. With that, I closed my eyes. I let the past wash over me. I let the quiet embrace me. And for the first time in decades, I felt peace. Even in old age, my mind wandered to the past. Memories came like ghosts, some gentle, some sharp. I remembered the day I had turned 10. My father had yelled at me for dropping a plate. I had cried silently in the corner, feeling small and unseen. My mother had comforted me, but only in whispers, afraid my father would notice. It was then I learned that life often rewarded silence and punished noise. I remembered my teenage years, hiding books I left behind the pantry, reading by candlelight while the family slept. Dreams of exploring the world, learning, and meeting people beyond the small town filled me with a secret fire. But every time I spoke of my desires, I was reminded, girls do not need such things. Focus on family. I carried those lessons forward, burying my own needs beneath the weight of responsibilities. And so, when I became a wife, a mother, and a neighbor everyone relied upon, I was prepared, too prepared. Motherhood had been beautiful, yes. But it had also been isolating. I remembered nights when my children were sick. I stayed awake, holding their fevered heads, murmuring lullabies, counting their breaths. I didn't sleep. I didn't rest. I didn't complain. Because mothers do not complain. And because my dreams were small by then, tucked safely under years of expectation. There were days when I cried silently in the kitchen, tears falling onto the flour while I kneaded bread for my family. No one saw me. No one asked me how I was. Even Thomas, my husband, did not notice my exhaustion. He was tired, yes, but so was I. And in our home, tiredness was private, unspoken, something women endured alone. After Thomas passed, my life became even more challenging. I stitched clothes for neighbors, cleaned houses, ran errands, carried groceries for friends. People depended on me, relied on me, confided in me. And I listened. I helped. I gave. But in return, I received little. Occasional thank yous, polite smiles, but never anyone asking about my health, my feelings, or my own pain. I became a ghost in my own life. I remember one afternoon, helping Mrs. Henderson carry her groceries. Her husband was away, and she needed assistance. I smiled, carried the bags, tucked my own aches aside. Later, I realized that my own grocery bags had been waiting by the door all morning. I had neglected myself, as always. The hardest part of old age was watching my children drift away. My eldest son moved to New York for work. Calls became monthly instead of weekly. The youngest daughter went abroad to study. Visits became rare, letters were short, emails even shorter. I told myself, this is what success looks like. And I believed it for a while. But at night, when the house was silent, I hugged pillows to feel the warmth of my children as I remembered it. I whispered their names into the darkness, hoping they might hear. I thought of all the meals I had cooked, the clothes I had sewn, the nights I had stayed awake. And yet, they were not here. Even in old age, the world could be cruel. Small acts of neglect and impatience became sharper over time. The neighbor who had once relied on me ignored my calls. The grocery clerk became impatient when I moved slowly. At the clinic, nurses would speak over me, assuming I did not understand, treating me like a child. Even family members, when visiting briefly, seemed irritated by my frailty. I had spent decades nurturing everyone, bearing everyone's pain, and now, the world seemed indifferent to mine. I learned something quietly: giving endlessly does not guarantee compassion in return. I closed my eyes and remembered small moments of happiness. The day my daughter won her first school award, and I had sewn her a special dress. The night my son learned to ride a bike, and I had held him steady, cheering silently. The first time Thomas had smiled genuinely at me after years of distance. And I remembered sorrow too. The winters when money was tight, and I had gone without bread so my children could eat. The nights I had stayed awake crying silently because no one would hear me. The moments I had endured harsh words from my husband or judgment from neighbors. All these moments, joy and sorrow, were threads in the tapestry of my life. I was proud of them. I was sad for them. Days stretched slowly. I woke up to the sound of the wind rattling the windows. The mornings were always cold, even in summer, because the heating in my house was old and stubborn. I tried to read, but my eyes were weak. I tried to write letters to my children, but the pen slipped in my trembling hands. I tried to call friends, but voices on the other end were always rushed, impatient. I realized that time was no longer my friend, it was a reminder. A reminder that I had given all of myself to everyone, and now, for myself, there was very little left. Some days hurt more than illness. I had learned that in old age, kindness becomes rare. The delivery man at the grocery store once snapped at me because I could not reach the counter fast enough. A young neighbor scolded me for letting my dog bark too loudly. Even the nurses at the clinic seemed irritated by my slow movements, as if frailty was an offense. And yet, I said nothing. Because I had been silent my whole life. And silence had been my shield. I closed my eyes and traveled back to my youth. I remembered my first day of school, the excitement of new books, the fear of making mistakes, the joy of learning something new. I remembered the days I hid my favorite books from my father because he thought girls didn't need knowledge. I remembered the nights I sat by candlelight, dreaming of seeing the world, learning languages, traveling to cities I had only read about. Then came marriage. Thomas was quiet, distant, never cruel but never warm. I gave him love, care, patience. And in return, I learned to stay small, to swallow my own needs. Motherhood arrived like a tidal wave. I bore children, fed them, clothed them, tended to their fevers, guided them through school, protected them from harm. I smiled when strangers praised me, what a devoted mother. And I hid the exhaustion, the loneliness, the dreams I had buried beneath diapers, laundry, and tears. As my children grew, they left. My eldest son moved across the country for his career. My daughter got married and settled in a different state. The youngest went abroad for studies. They called occasionally, but the calls were short. Visits were rare. And slowly, my world shrank again, just as it had when I was a child. I told myself, they are happy. That is what matters. But late at night, hugging a pillow, I whispered their names into the darkness, wishing for a glimpse of the past. Silence became heavy. I had spent decades giving everything, listening to everyone, soothing their pains. And now, in my old age, no one asked about my pain. No one knocked on my door. no one called. I realized the cruel truth. Love given endlessly is not always returned. Sacrifice does not always create gratitude. And kindness is often invisible. I wondered if I had been wrong to give everything. But then, I remembered that it was in giving that I had found my purpose. Even if no one saw it, even if no one acknowledged it, it had mattered. My body betrayed me slowly. Knees ached with every step. My back groaned if I bent too long. I fell once on the porch, bruised my arm, and no one was there to help. I had to manage alone. Cooking, cleaning, walking, every task became a struggle. But I persisted. Because persistence had defined my life. I visited the doctor often, though waiting in clinics reminded me how invisible old people could feel. Patients and staff hurried past me. No one asked if I was in pain. I learned to smile anyway, to nod, to make polite conversation. It was easier than explaining the ache in my bones. Yet, there were brief, shining moments. A neighbor once knocked on my door with a plate of cookies. I shared tea with her on the porch, speaking softly, savoring human company. The postman sometimes lingered for a short chat. And the children, when they called, spoke politely, even if briefly. These small moments were treasures. They reminded me that the world was not completely cold. But they were fleeting. I often thought about my past. The life I had led. The sacrifices I had made. The dreams I had buried. Sometimes I regretted staying silent, hiding my feelings, putting everyone else first. Sometimes I regretted thinking that if I gave enough, everyone would remember me. But then I realized, regrets do not change the past. And in the quiet corners of my heart, I still felt pride. I had loved fully. I had given fully. I had lived fully. Even if the world forgot me, even if my children were busy, even if friends had moved on, I had lived.